Yo, that was amazing, man.
Oh, thank you, man.
That was beautiful.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, so that was an acoustic version, stripped down version of Grey Love,
Yep.
which is from your first project, your EP.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Berhana, self-titled.
Exactly, yeah.
And that song is actually how I first discovered you. Like I'm sure many people, because it got featured on Donald Glover's show, Atlanta.
Yep.
That must have been huge for an up-and-coming artist like you. Or at the time, you might not have even been up-and-coming. You were just someone putting out music.
Yeah.
I mean, it must have been massive.
It was crazy. It was crazy for a few different reasons. That show was my favorite show on television by far. I was like super in tune with it. I loved the writing. I'm from Atlanta. Donald's one of my favorite artists. So just all of that, happening at once was a very cool moment for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of younger artists like look for placements and find placements. How big are placements for like an artist like you?
I think it depends on like the show. It depends if it's like a movie, commercial, it's all different. I don't go out of my way to like get placements. I think there are a lot of people that do. They're like, oh, this movie is looking for these style songs. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I remember when 50 Shades of Grey came out, I was with this other team at the time, and they were like, oh, like 50 Shades of Grey, like you just gotta make something a little sexy and da-da-da. And I was like, oh, I'm not about to do that, Yeah.
That'd be a bad look, man.
Yeah, exactly. But to like have your own song that feels like you.
Yeah.
And then someone else takes that's cool. That's not going out of my way for it feels better.
Absolutely. So another reason that must have been like important and big for you is because you weren't initially trying to be a musician or be, like play music for a living. You were trying to be a screenwriter.
Yeah.
And
totally.
so it's like kind of your two worlds colliding in a way, like this amazing show with your music. How did you get into screenwriting?
My sister. That's like the easiest answer. My sister is 12 years older than me. And she kind of like shaped who I am. She went to NYU, but she would always like come home for extended amounts of time just to like stay with me and still be present in my life, and would put me onto different movies she really liked and television shows, and would break down A stories, B stories, C stories. Like she already knew what like she wanted me to be in a way. Like we kind of joke about that all the time. But I was like, oh, I want to go to NYU. I want to be in the dramatic writing program. And that was like, I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. I love TV. I love film. So I was like, oh, I just want to like write. For the rest of my life, I just want to write. And I did music, but it was more so like a passion project. It was for me. I'd show a couple friends here and there, but I never thought it was going to be the driving force by any means.
And what were the first songs you wrote?
The first song I wrote was about like my dad who like left. I was like 7 or 8. My sister had left the house at the time, but my brother was still there. And it was to no music. It was just like story. It was just like writing. I wasn't playing piano. I was just like creating the melody and just writing the thing. And I showed my brother, and he was the first person to really encourage me when it came to music, because he saw it as like almost like a journal. He was like, yo, you have to make sure that you keep doing this and letting out how you feel this way. He was like, I had no idea you felt like this. And that was the first song I wrote.
That's amazing to start trying to write songs at 7. What were you, and Atlanta you grew up in Atlanta, and that's like such a diverse musical town. Totally. Like there's so much music going on and all kinds of music. People I think now just think of like trap music or whatever, but like, there's so much kinds of music going on in Atlanta. So was there just a lot of music going on in your home, or?
In my home, yeah, there was a bit of music. I'd say like there was a lot of like oldies, like Sam Cooke. My mom loved like Stevie Wonder. There was also like Ethiopian music being played a bunch. And then whatever my brother was listening to, whether it was like BC Boys or Outkast. And my sister as well used to always make me CDs, mix CDs. So, and we were in the church, but I didn't have like, one of those parents. I was like, listen to all of Prince's discography. Like, this is amazing. You have to understand why. I didn't have that. And I think the first thing I gravitated towards was storytelling. It was just like, oh, they're telling a very like unique story. I like how the words sound together. And that's what drew me in first.
How steeped in Ethiopian culture were you growing up as a kid?
Um, it was interesting growing up in Atlanta and like being first generation African, because you go home and it's, the smells are Ethiopian. The language that you're hearing your parents speaking is from Ethiopia. The decor, everything is Ethiopia. And then you like walk outside and it's like this Georgia, so there's like this Southern pride aspect, and it's also Atlanta, so it's like very black and it's like very proud as well. So to be in like these three different worlds at once was a lot at times. But as an observer, I began to like really take it all in and appreciate it as the older I got.
Yeah, because those are three really strong cultures.
Exactly,
man.
yeah.
Like you're just like, I didn't even think about that part because I think of Atlanta sometimes as like on an island, same as like New Orleans. But yeah, there's like that Southern sort of element to it too, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're not specifically in Atlanta, if you grew up
Exactly.
right outside of it. Like, did you ever feel, I don't know, I know a lot of first generation kids sometimes struggle with feeling like, maybe you don't want to accept your heritage because you want to sort of just, you want to fit in at school,
Totally.
So did you ever find yourself wanting to be more fit into more one culture than the other, or
Yeah, totally. There were definitely different times because I went to a school. My mom put me in this private school that was predominantly white, that she worked at so that I could go to the school. But I remember once there was like a show and tell, and my mom brought some different Ethiopian food, and like kids were like spitting it up, like, what is this? What is some of my favorite foods, mind you, like some of my favorites. And then seeing that made me feel like, ashamed. Because I was really young at the time, and I was like, oh, I guess this isn't good. So I don't want kids to come over and smell my house and eat the food we have. I'd rather go to your house.
Right. Yep.
So there was a lot of that when I was really young. And then the older I got, the more that just like went away.
Yeah.
And I found a community of a lot of different like first generation Africans through church and sports. We became super close. And those were the people I really identified with, even though they weren't Ethiopian, or they didn't go to the same schools or whatever. It was just, we share that thing of being in different worlds at once.
Yeah, you sure being different in this place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking, man.
Yeah.
The food, that's just like,
Yeah,
feels like
crazy.
such a rejection.
The one that spit out the food, it wasn't even crazy like food. It's like ginche. It's like kind of like similar to like rice or couscous. It's like something that no one should spit out. Just like some dumb kid.
Something really tame.
Yeah. His name was Casey.
It's not Duro Watt. So you remember the name still, Casey.
Yeah, his name's Casey. Punk.
Man, I saw you went to Ethiopia recently, right?
I did,
How often do you go back there?
That was my first time, actually.
First time?
A month ago, yeah. Yeah, I had an opportunity to do a show over there. My mom hadn't been back for 47 years.
Wow.
So I was like, this is the time. We should both go. And I got to bring her with me and see the country through her eyes. And it was a surreal experience.
And how did you connect with Mulatu Astaki out there, man? That's insane.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Brilliant Ethiopian musician, like incredible discography.
Incredible, absolutely. He's been one of my favorites since I was young. That was one of the ones my mom put me onto at an early age. And Albie, a girl from our team who's incredible. She's right over here. Yep. She made that happen. She knew I really liked Mulatu, and she had a connection. Yeah, she got us some time so we could sit down and really chop it up. Super thankful. It was crazy.
How was that time, man? What did he?
It was crazy, man. I like came to him, kind of like approaching him with an idea I wanted to do, and he was like, kind of down, but then it totally flipped. It totally flipped. He was like, immediately he just like taught me so much. It was like we sat down for nearly 3 hours, and he just talked to me about the history of music, how Ethiopia like plays into that, what instruments started in Ethiopia that no one knows about. And he's really like championing this kind of like, no one really knows like that much about Ethiopian music and its history, including Ethiopian people.
Yeah. And
he really wants to educate others. And he did that. He taught me so much. It was crazy.
That's amazing. That's like sitting down with that's like the Ethiopian Quincy Jones.
Exactly, yeah.
Like,
I just shut up. I barely talked those 3 hours.
What instruments are from Ethiopia? I didn't even realize there was.
The masinko is like a really big one. It's kind of like a cello. That was one of the things he said. He was like, oh, what came first, the masinko or the cello? And I was like, I guess the masinko. because just how he was phrasing the question. And then he kept doing that with different instruments, horned instruments, whatever it was. And then he would go into the history of it and how that instrument was built and which tribe made that instrument. Yeah, there are a lot of unique instruments to Ethiopia.
That's amazing. Yeah, you can hear it when you listen to the music. It sounds like it's like orchestras full of like instruments. You feel like, what is that? You know, either they're playing it in a way I've never heard this thing played, or it's a completely different instrument.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's such a beautiful like sound that it's just, you know, when you're not used to hearing those sounds, it just sounds especially just like mystical or something. You know, it's incredible. How many? So you had 2 siblings.
Yeah,
and you're the youngest.
I'm the youngest. Yeah,
and they're both putting you on to movies and TV shows and music.
Totally.
And so then you decide you want to go study screenwriting. And are you making music in college, or are you?
I was. When I got there, it was like I'd put music behind me. I remember I did one show in Atlanta right before I left where I just did like covers and a couple of my songs. And then after that, it was kind of like all right, and I'll come back to this later.
How'd the performance look? Like, what was it? Just you and?
It was me in a band of like people I just like recruited who were great. But we rehearsed like maybe for a week, and they like played this show with me for free. I had like no money. And then when I came to New York, I was like, all right, I'm gonna put that behind me, and I'm gonna go all into this writing.
And did you put it behind you because did it go well, or did it just feel like?
No, it went fine, but it was like, oh, this isn't what I'm going to New York to be successful in this field.
Got it.
So I was like, I'll just revisit this later. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I was just, for the most part, only doing writing, interning at shows, doing a lot of different stuff at like UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade. And then into like my senior year, I started like getting kind of restless because I really wanted to do music, but I just didn't know how. I hadn't been like, there were a lot of like jazz school kids I'd been hanging out with, but it wasn't people I was like necessarily trying to make music with.
Right.
And then this one kid, his name was Jimmy, he had heard I like sang because I used to like go to the piano room downstairs at the dorm and play songs now and then, and people would come listen. And he was like, oh, we should just do something together just for the fuck of it, see how it goes. And I was like, yeah, for sure, let's do it. And we did one song called Kingdom together for his project. And then it did pretty well. Like for the first time I'd ever like put out a song, it like got right up. So it was like doing really well for him. And I was like, oh, you know what? This is cool. I'm going to try and make my own stuff, or at least one song. I'm going to try and make one song under my name, see how it goes.
Right.
And then I wrote like basically the outline of Janet, the song I ended up putting on my EP. And I'd connected with this kid, his name's Sapphire, who also went to my school for jazz, but he had dropped out because he was like, I know exactly what I want to do. I don't need to like be in school for it. And I loved that. I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to work with you. I want to like see if we can create something. And we ended up making the full EP together.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So how did you write? So I love Janet too, because it's again, it's kind of combining both of your worlds, right? It's music and it's combining like, it's clearly someone with a love for TV had to write that. And I think probably everyone our age grew up loving, like obsessed with the Fresh Prince. Yeah. So it was such a beautiful send up to Aunt Viv.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the idea for that, and how did it kind of develop?
I saw a tweet from one of my really close friends, who's one of those first generation kids I was telling you about that I was super tight with in Atlanta. He tweeted, if you fuck with the light skin Aunt Viv, I can't trust you. And I thought it was so fun. I just like started laughing, you know. I retweeted it or whatever. But then it like kind of was this, I was like, man, what did happen, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of like planted this seed, and then I started just researching, like going in like this wormhole of what happened? Why was she kicked off the show? Does anyone really know? Like, and then that led into being like, oh, this situation's kind of like fucked up. She hasn't worked since that show, really.
Yeah, really?
She like has had small stuff, but like...
She was so good in that show, too.
Yeah, she was. And she was kind of like, excommunicated from this community she worked so hard to be a part of.
Yeah.
She was a really talented dancer, singer, actress, went to Juilliard, was in the first production of Cats on Broadway, finally snags this series regular on NBC. Does so well. People love her. But because of a couple tiffs she gets in, NBC's like, you know what? No, you're crazy. We're going to tell everybody you're crazy and you're off of this thing. And it's just like that. It all went away and it made me so sad. And I was like, wow, I want to write something about this. So I wrote the chorus first at my house in Atlanta over like my piano. And I was like, oh, I'm going to keep going with this.
And then you called it Janet because that's Janet
Hubert. Yeah,
Hubert,
that's her real name.
Right, is the actress who played the initial Aunt Viv.
Aunt Viv, yeah.
Right, the OG Aunt Viv. And then the verses, are those about her too? Because it seems like the verses are maybe...
Yeah, that's all about her.
It's all about her.
It's funny. A lot of people, when I first put it out, it's like girls would come up to me and be like, oh, like, my name's Janet, or like, I want to be your Janet. And I was like, yo, this song completely went over your head. this is not about a love interest. This is not about anything of that sort. It's about, it's an ode to Janet Hubert. And it's about like being forgotten and what that's like and how I'm afraid of that, You're
afraid of being forgotten.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, man. That's good songwriting, man, because it's like, it's about something so specific and because the dressing around it sounds so great, it's like, you can hear almost whatever you want to hear in it,
Yeah.
Like you could hear that song and totally think it was about, being left behind by a lover or, it just depends on certain.
That's cool.
I love that it's open for interpretation.
That's always been my favorite stuff. And it took me a long time to be like, okay, this is what it means to me. Because I like that people were taking away their own things. That's one of my favorite things about music and something that I did with like the music I was listening to when I was younger in college. Even now, it's like I make my own interpretations and that's what makes it special.
Yeah, all the time. I often sometimes sometimes I like to look at lyrics and then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm disappointed. Not that the lyrics are bad, but I'm like, wow, I thought this whole time this was about this and I identified it with this. And when I was feeling this way, I put this on and it made me feel so like, so good, and you're like, oh, it's like ruined now, and I don't want to ruin it,
Totally. That's the same reason why I don't look up lyrics a lot of the time. It's because I don't want it to be ruined.
So when you put out the EP, you worked with Sapphire. What was your intention for that? Just to put it out or?
Yeah, my intention was, well, a little bit before I'd put out the EP, I was working on it, but I wasn't fully in. I was still doing so many other things. And I remember I was sending in a lot of like different packets, like applying to shows. And,
like writing packets.
Right. And there was one show I thought I was going to get. And I was like, oh, if I get this, I'm going to go all in with this and I'll like marinate on the EP and I'll, it'll come out when it comes out.
What show was it?
It was Colbert when he like took over
the
Letterman
show?
spot. Yeah.
The Letterman spot. Yeah.
And then I ended up not getting it and I was like, oh, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to finish this EP right now. I was like, there's nothing else I want to do. I'd stopped sending in packets at that point. And I was like, all right, here I go. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to put this out. I'm going to move to LA before it comes out. And then I'm going to see where it goes. And it went fine. It was a slow burn.
You put it out. You weren't on a label at the time, right? Or were you?
I wasn't on a label. No. I had just gotten managers like after I'd already finished the project. And they were like, oh, yeah, you should put this on Spotify and all these different, Apple Music, whatever. And then
you're out here in LA.
And then I got a job in a restaurant in LA. And then it slowly just built.
What was the tipping point moment for that? Like when did it start? At some point that caught fire. When did?
It's funny. I was working at this restaurant in LA that I really hated. But I'd worked in a restaurant in New York where I'd worked up from server to chef to assistant manager. So I was making like good money for where I was at.
Right.
But then I went to LA and it was the same style restaurant, but they were like, nah, you're going to be a busser and you have to train for like a month. And when you're training, you get no money. You get you get paid shit. So I was still in that phase. And I remember Tyler, the creator, came into the restaurant And I was like, someone I like look up to, an artist I look up to, and I was just like, damn, this is not how I'm trying to meet Tyler, the Creator. You know what I'm saying? I was like, so I'm just avoiding his table at all costs. And then my boss is like, yo, I want to see you wipe down this table, which is like kind of close to his table. And I was like, fine, dude, whatever. Like, head down, go wipe the table. And then this man yells at me because he's like, you didn't get the sides. So he like shows me how to like wipe the sides of a table. He's like, look, takes the rag and like does it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna quit this week. I was like, this is the worst, like, this is the worst feeling ever. And then it just so happened to be like that next week, I got paid from my music just enough to like make it through 1 month. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna make sure I stretch this bitch out. And I'm not about to get another job right now. And if I have to next month, cool. But it ended up being the next month I got a little bit more than I got in the month before. And I was like, all right, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to make, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, stay my ass inside, right? And then it kept like growing. That was the last time I had to work at a restaurant.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And were you doing shows at that point, or no? So your money was just coming in from the EP.
From the EP, from streaming. Yeah.
Thank God for streaming, man.
Thank God,
people,
bro.
I'm like,
thank God.
I love it.
Yeah, fact. I was trying to put that EP out for free too, so I'm glad I didn't do that because it enabled me to, start doing this full time.
We'll be right back with Berhana after the break. We're back with Berhana performing his song "Golden." So where'd that Kierkegaard line come from, man?
Oh, that was college. In college, we were reading Kierkegaard in one of my philosophy classes. And his ideas on authenticity were something I really gravitated towards. Yeah, and that's that line. That line's actually not even in the song that we put out. It was like
I was gonna say, it was
a lost verse. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, speaking of like not listening to lyrics, like I've listened to that song a bunch. I never heard that line until today.
Yeah. We were like, oh, let's like stretch out the song a bit. And I haven't ever performed that verse. So I was like, oh yeah, let's do it here.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that. First of all, I mean, I studied philosophy in college because I got into Kierkegaard and I loved it. And then I ended up not being able to study in the Kierkegaard in college. Like, they just didn't have any of that in the curriculum, and I was bummed. So that was great. And I just perked up on that because I just hadn't heard that.
That's sweet,
in the song. So how'd you come up with the idea to structure? So your new album is called Han, and this is your first actual album. Other one would be more of an EP.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because there's these little skits, and not like these extended rap skits, but there are like these cool little skits in between songs that kind of remind me of like Midnight Marauders or something, right? Like how there's like this lady guiding you through the album. In this case, it's a flight attendant. How'd you come up with that idea?
Midnight Marauders was one of my favorite albums growing up. And I thought I always wanted to do my own version of that, where it felt like a little more narrative based and I could put it in a space specifically. And so the concept of the album came before anything. When I write, it's like I go about it different ways, the process of it. But for this album, it was like, oh, I know how I want the album to sound sonically. I know what I want the concept to be. And I know I want them to flow together seamlessly, and have all of these different sounds. Like, certain songs don't sound like other songs on the album, but they still feel like they come from the same world. And that was my starting point. Yeah.
You used a band on this one, right?
Yeah, I used a band, a lot of like great musicians. Danny McKinnon, who's in here playing with me today. Pomo, he produced the entire record with me.
And how'd you connect with him?
He was someone I really wanted to get into a session with. Him and Danny both, actually. They were putting out a lot of like different videos, just them doing covers and like jamming. It wasn't even them putting out songs. They were putting out videos of just, where they were and like what they were listening to. And it really, I was like, oh, I'm listening to the same things like right now. I was like, I really want to get in a session and see like what that's like. And then one session turned into like 3 sessions. And then I kind of finessed. I was like, threw out this idea like, oh, what if we did like a few songs and made it, into its own project, knowing I wanted this to be the album. And but Yeah, Pomo was so down. That's like something that's really great about him as a producer. He loves like challenges. And even though I was throwing like a lot of different things his way, he was just really excited to do something he hadn't done before.
From the initial idea of it just being like a small project to becoming a full record, when did that?
In Japan. Along? In Japan. We went to Japan to record. I had a couple festival dates out there, and Danny came to play with us. Pomo came to play with us. And we just had this like whole group that we were already working on the album together. So we were like, oh, let's stay like a few more weeks, rent out a studio, and just go as hard as we can.
In Japan?
In Japan.
Wow.
And then when we were there, it was like, that's when it was like, oh, here's the outline. It's all right there. Now we just need to finish these songs.
In like Drunk, for instance, which comes after Golden,
yep.
Which you guys will play at some point today. The opening line is Drunk in Japan?
Drunk in Tokyo, yeah.
Drunk in Tokyo.
Drunk in Tokyo, I do not know the language nor how I know your name.
Right. And going to Japan, did recording there, did that like change... Did that change the vibe of the recordings at all, or the sessions, or like what?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's whenever you're in a new place, it kind of opens you up. Like you're not in the same routine. Everything's super new to you, especially a place like Japan where everybody looks different from you. Every store is different from any store you go to in America. It's a whole new world. So being in like that environment and like creating, you're going to get something different than you get when you're at home.
Right.
So it definitely informed everything that we were doing, for sure.
And the restaurant you were working at in New York was a Japanese restaurant.
Yep.
And you had to like learn some of the language there, right?
Yeah.
Is there like do you have an affinity for the culture there, or is this all kind of accidental that you worked at a restaurant and had to learn some Japanese and that you ended up getting like dates in Japan?
Oh yeah, it was super accidental. It was when I got the job, it was around the time where I was like, all right, I'm just doing this EP, I'm gonna finish this, da da da. And I was like, whoa, I'm broke. I need some money. So I'd applied to so many different jobs, couldn't get anything. Then I had a buddy in New York who was like, oh, I have this job, they're looking for people. But there's like a catch. They want you to speak Japanese. They want you to do this like 15-minute chant before shift starts that you have to learn. They want you to, it's like still very Japanese. All your bosses are going to be Japanese. They barely speak English.
But what's the chant you have to do before you start a shift?
Crazy. Actually, if at the end of Golden, there's like, you kind of hear like this end of this chant. And that was me recording the actual chant that we did.
Do you remember any of it still?
I remember a little bit.
No, the whole 15 minutes, but you got like 20 seconds in you?
Yeah. Uchi no yo na mise ga ippai aru no ni, okyakusama wa uchi no mise urarande kureta. Densha ni notte wazawaza kite kurasatta. Atama o ikuku sagete mo maniawanai. Koshi o hikura hikuku shite mo otsukanai. Arigatai koto da, mottainai koto da. It's a long thing, bro. It's a very long thing.
To my untrained ear, that sounds like the accent's perfect too, man. It sounds like you're killing
it. Crazy, bros. And I was working like 40-hour weeks. And if you do like the lunch shift and the dinner shift, that's 30 minutes every day.
Are you getting paid for that part? Are you on the clock?
We're on the clock, thank God. But yeah, it was a very intense environment.
Or it's just like kind of.
I know like the gist. I don't know exactly. I don't know everything. My Japanese used to be way better when I was there. But yeah, that kind of like kicked off the affinity, I guess, for Japan. It was never, there are a lot of musicians in particular and artists who will say that, like I said, with this album, a big starting point for me was Japanese funk. And I feel like there are a lot of artists who'd be like, oh, like I just heard this like Japanese funk from the 80s. It's so weird and unique. I'm going to use this as a starting, kind of fetishizing this thing, where for me it was like, oh no, all of my bosses were Japanese, only spoke Japanese. They would tell me like, yo, you should read this book by Ryonosuke Akutagawa, or you should watch this movie by Yasujiro Ozu, or you should listen to this album by Yukihiro Takahashi, or like they would put me on to things to where it was like, oh, because of that, then I was like, oh, this author's really tight. Who did he inspire? Or this filmmaker's really tight. Who are his contemporaries? And it kind of kept going down that's how I got inspired. It's because of the environment I was in.
Wow.
Yeah.
this is like putting you in like a whole fourth other culture.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
That's also very strong and distinct.
Totally.
So you were listening to all that stuff even before you went out there to record. So that must have been kind of fun to be able to record out there. Was that what gave you the idea to say like, hey, let's try to rally the troops and do it?
Yep, absolutely.
Cool, man.
Definitely.
Want to do Drunk?
Yeah, let's do it.
And this is about your first trip to Japan, right?
First and second.
First and second.
Both combined into one.
Great.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, thank you for doing this, guys.
Of course.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
It's all over?
That's it, man. Thanks to Berhana for taking us through his first 2 projects and sharing some of that incredible Japanese chant with us. Be sure to check out his album Han, along with our other favorite Berhana songs on a playlist we created at brokenrecordpodcast.com. You can also find a playlist we had him put together of some of his favorite Japanese city pop. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/brokenrecordpodcast. We're always putting up our old interviews there and our new ones, sometimes with bonus content. Broken Record is produced with help from Jason Gambrell, me LaBelle, Leah Rose, and Martin Gonzalez for Pushkin Industries. The theme music's by Kenny Beats. I'm Justin Richmond. Thanks for listening.